My name is Lukasz Janczuk. I'm working for Juggler Games, the video games company. I'm one of the co-founders of the company, and I'm working as a lead designer and a producer.
So could you please describe the game in your own words, like My Memory of Us?
So My Memory of Us is a platformer adventure game that focuses rather on the logical challenges rather than purely on no, once again. My Memory of Us is a platformer adventure game. It's a game about friendship. It's a kind of a fairy tale that tells about the friendship of a boy and a girl during the very troubled, dark times when they are living in the country that is attacked by the evil king, and they have to survive using their friendship.
That's a perfect explanation. I think it really encapsulates perfectly what the game really is. Okay, that's great. And you have said that your role was you were like the co-founder of Juggler Games, and you were the lead editor, right? The lead editor and
lead designer.
Lead designer, sorry, yeah, the lead designer of the game. So could you please explain your role in a few words? What did you do when you were working for developing My Memory of Us? What were your tasks?
I was working like my position touches almost everything within the project. So I was working on like designing the levels, creating ideas for the levels, what will happen on them, what part of the story we are going to tell on the different levels. And also because at the time we were a very small team, I was also working in the game editor, actually scripting the gameplay, everything that player interacts with during the playthrough.
That's perfect. So you were also scripting the script, right? The narrative of the game. Okay, that's
I
great.
wasn't the only one, but yes, I was also scripting the levels.
Also, Lukasz, right? Your colleague Lukasz, I have a conversation with him on Monday. Like we discussed like about the narratives and of the game. So that's great. I'm gonna also ask you some questions about like the storytelling and the screenplay, because I think is very, very interesting. So, but before going to that, like more specific questions, let me ask you, what were your intentions in building a video game around this serious matter, as is the Second World War, the Holocaust, and the Nazi occupation of Poland?
It was when we were starting to work on the game, actually, when we even came out with the idea of the company, because it was the first project done by our company, we were looking for something that will work for us. We knew we wanted to create games that have a meaning, that tells the stories, that touch the emotions of the players. And we were looking for something like this for our first project, and also something that is manageable to create by the small team. And we were actually analyzing a bunch of the ideas, but we kind of stick to this because we like the idea of friendship that is important for the characters. We felt that this is the right thing to talk about, and from all the historical subject, the dark times. I mean, we are from Warsaw. This is like a living history for us because we know the histories, the stories from World War II, like from our families. Almost everyone has some sort of family history about this. For example, during the work on My Memory of Us, I happened to I found out that two persons from my family actually has the award that is awarded for the people that helped Jews during the Holocaust. I forgot the name. Just Among the Nations of the World. I'm not sure if I'm remembering the English name correct. So yeah, those are the stories that are alive in our families, in our surroundings. So it was like, it felt right to try to talk about this in our way.
That's a very great response, and actually like very interesting. I mean, we are like, I'm from Spain, so Second World War is not very studied in schools. So if you want to get to know more about the conflict and what really happened, you have either to do research on your own or like enroll in university in history or something like that, in a bachelor's in history. So for instance, while I was playing my memory of us, I had like of course, like I even though like the game does not explicitly refer to the Nazi occupation, it doesn't say like, okay, it was Poland 1939 and Hitler occupied Poland, but I knew that it was about Second World War. So you did a very fine job in recreating those atmosphere, because it was like very easy to me to identify those factors. And also like the fact that you have told me that you are very close to this kind of like past, I think like has made of your game like a very personal thing that is very easy to transfer to video game players like myself, that I have not a direct connection to it, but I could empathize with what you were transmitting in the video game. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
So that's good. I want to ask you like one follow-up question in this matter. You have said that it's a living history in Poland, so it's like very present in Polish society, and that you know people from your family that has undergone these kind of experiences during World War II. What kind of research did you do, preliminary research, when you were doing when you were preparing or designing your video game, My Memory of Us? Did you do any sort of research? Did you do interviews? Did you use any textbooks? Yeah.
I mean, we mostly went through how to say it. There was a lot of work put into finding some of how the city, the Warsaw and other cities in Poland looked back in the day, how people looked like what they were, and stuff like this. This was mostly job done by the art team, but for the story itself, because it's a fictional story with a lot of fictional elements just inspired so by the true events, we didn't dig that much. Aside maybe from the characters that happen here and there, that show up here and there in the game, that are actual historical characters. So yeah, we checked their background, we checked if they fit in the story, but also again, because we are looking at this through the fairy tale lens, we could allow self, like some of them were already dead. We could compress the events to show them in the same timeline, stuff like this. But yeah, so we dig into the characters, and the other thing is like it's not a game built exactly on the historical facts, but it's built rather on a lot of inspiration for the story comes from someone told something like anecdote or a family story that something happened. Then we could pick up those small elements and make them a part of narrative to tell the story we wanted to tell.
I think it's a very, very interesting answer, actually. I really, really like it. And yes, like I want to tackle, like, I mean, I send you the question, so you already know that I want to tackle how this fictional story works, because I found it like very, very fascinating, the fact that, as I have mentioned before, that without explicitly referring to the Second World War II historical events, it was like very accurate in terms of like dresses or like the costumes of the characters, the way the city was designed, for instance. And so it was very interesting. So I want to ask you, why did you choose to write, like, because you have told me that you wanted to write a fairy tale instead of like a historical video game, but what was the reason that made you choose to write a fictional story instead of writing a historical video game, like, I don't know, let's say Battlefield or Call of Duty, those kinds of games? So what made you make this fictional, historical, educational video game?
What we wanted to achieve is to make it more universally understood by the players. So you could enjoy the game, enjoy the story, even without the knowledge of the background, what actually happened. Because from my experience, from my knowledge, even you said just a moment ago that the knowledge about the events during the World War II is very different, depends who you are interacting with, from what part of the world the person is. So you have some knowledge because there are lessons about World War II, but if you like skip to the North America, there is a lot of missing elements in comparison to what we know about World War II. There is a very different perception of World War II, what was important, what was less important, and what overall actually happened. To the point, and that's kind of a recent experience for me, because I had the chance, I'm actually working with some people from Saudi Arabia, and I happened to go to the subject of World War II with them, and what happened in Warsaw about Warsaw Uprising and stuff like this. And for them, it was a blank slate. They had almost no knowledge about any details of what happened. Aside from vague idea of World War II, they have like almost no information. So that's why we wanted to make the game more universally understand, and it led us to situations that were also interesting when we were going around presenting the game, like in the US. We found out that this universal approach kind of work for this game, because when we see the World War II, we see the uprising, we see the Holocaust, people started through the emotion, through the metaphor, they started to see a different thing that was more relatable for them. Like at the time, it was in America, we had comments like it's something like Trump and his wall, or even the discrimination of African Americans, stuff like this. They were reading a bit different stuff from this exact story. So this was something we wanted to achieve, this universal message that can be read in a bit different ways around the world.
I think that your answer is actually a key in this event. This is why we have chosen Memory of Us, because even though without explicitly referring to, as I have said, like historical events, you really obtain, or you really gain like those feelings that the people at that time were feeling, right? Like the feeling of being discriminalized, marginalized by like in the game, it was like the girl when she gets color in red, for instance, and then she cannot get access to some of the spaces in the game. So you really empathize with her. I have one follow-up question in this regard. So you have said that you aim at making a universal game. So do you think, like, by not explicitly referring to historical events, as in this case was My Memory of Us, the Second World War II, you can raise awareness about what those events imply in the population? As you have said, for instance, like in the US, like people were kind of like seeing some similarities with the Donald Trump wall. So you can raise like awareness on those feelings and on those moral values.
Yeah, I mean, it can be done, but for our game, it works rather in the way that it's a tool to start discussion. Especially from someone who doesn't have the background, who doesn't have the knowledge about the details of World War II, and when they are starting to see this game and they're starting to feel the emotions, they can start asking questions, even the simple questions. And we saw this actually when we had a chance to see that like families visiting our booth on different events, and the kids are playing. And you can see this difference in understanding what is happening. Like the adults understood the metaphor, but the kids just play the game and see the kids holding hands and stuff like this. And this was the space for them to actually start the discussion, especially those were like kids that have just a bit of knowledge about the history, and they like at some point like, this is a World War II. So yeah, then the question shows up: was it real? What actually happened? So in this way, the game can be a start of a discussion, the start of exploration of what happened, and a chance to open the gate for what you said, the to remember what happened, and to I don't know. I mean, I think I kind of touched on everything I was thinking, like because this. It works as a tool. It's not a history book. You won't learn the history from this, even though we put some bits here and there. But I hope it can like get your interest to actually get more information. So as a vessel to explore something new for the player.
I think the last part, when you said like as a vessel to explore something more, is the perfect metaphor or representation, right, of of what you were saying. And I really think that is very, very interesting what you were saying, because I was discussing with your colleague the other day, and he mentioned that like as video games as an art expression, its objective is not to provide answers or to provide facts like this is like this or like a thesis. It's more like to raise questions, and this is kind of in line of what you were saying. And I think like this is very interesting what you were saying, because you can make people to raise questions about things that are currently happening, like in Europe with far-right parties that are decriminalizing like some collectives, or in the US with Donald Trump, who doesn't want the Mexicans in. So I think it's very interesting what you were saying in that aspect, and it is very useful, not only for maybe explaining what happened in Poland, but also to be a universal umbrella to understand the human species, right? So moving on, I want to ask you about the Nazi occupation of Poland, right? So even though like the game, as I have said, does not explicitly refer to that moment in your country's history, of course, like the game could be used to raise awareness about what happened, in case there's like some populist parties that are kind of like rejecting the Nazis' brutality or Holocaust denials, as we have seen in the recent years, and so on. So do you think like this decision of not making the game explicit about what happened could also help raise awareness and to preserve historical memory in Poland?
It's like for my memory of us, it's about the theme, the subject that is most important, and what works with the theme. So to straightforward show the darkest elements, the death camps and stuff like this, it didn't exactly work with the theme we wanted to show. So the theme was always a friendship, and the friendship that can conquer all of the elements. So the kind of the crimes we picked to show within the game were the crimes that were directly hurting the human connections, the families, the friendships, the society. So those are the most explicitly shown crimes, because they are the most important for the theme of the game, because those are the elements that can, if allowed to exist, they could actually broke this friendship, and they managed to keep this friendship throughout the history. That's why we didn't go into showing the most gruesome elements of the Holocaust.
Yeah, in my opinion, when I was playing the game, I think like it worked quite well. Like you show, for instance, like lootings, or when the Nazis stole things from stores, or like this kind of like rejection of some parts of the population, and that really works well for me. You know, it was like I felt like very empathizing with the little girl who was the first one who was discriminated when she was coloring red. So I really like that decision of you in making the game this way. However, I read like some of the reviews of the game, and I do not necessarily agree with them, but like some have claimed that the game would have been stronger if you have designed it in a more historical way. Do you agree with them? Do you I mean, I do not agree, but that's of course my opinion as a video game player. But you as a designer, do you agree with them? Do you think like it could have been improved if it was like more explicitly historical video game, or do you think it works just fine?
Well, I do not agree with that, especially for this game. It would help in any significant way to be more accurate with dates, with facts, with events, because like when you are interacting with history, with events from the past, you can do it on many different levels. Like you can go and buy a book that will detail all what happened, the dates, the numbers, how many soldiers died in the battle that took place on a given day, and stuff like this. And this is absolutely necessary to interact with the history. But there is a lot of other ways you can interact with this. The stories of a single person, of their experience, their memories. Sometimes their memories can be wrong, can be different their point of view on certain events can be different from like what history told us it should be interpreted. So it gives us a lot of perspective. And then there is something like My Memory of Us that doesn't exactly go directly into all the details of the history, but touches the emotion and tries to transcend those emotions from the people who could experience this to someone who is living right now and who luckily don't have to experience them. And so that's why we have those different tools for people to experience history. And I think when we are operating on the emotional level, we don't have to jump into accuracy of all possible details, and it can be as powerful, but have a different role in connecting with history than the history book.
Yeah, I see your point. I agree with it. I think it's, honestly, frankly speaking, I think is actually quite accurate what you were saying. And yeah, like I really felt what you were saying. I want to mention one.
Sorry for interrupting, but I kind of just to add maybe to this, maybe you will find this useful. Like My Memory of Us is like not the only game based on historical events I ever worked, because before I also worked on the Enemy Front, which is also World War II game, and it revolves around mostly about Warsaw Uprising and some other historical events. It's a purely action game, it's a shooter, and experience from working on both of those games showed me one thing about, it's more from the gameplay design stuff, what I've learned from those two games. It's like historical events tend to be hard to interpret them as a gameplay elements. If I'm trying to be very strictly follow every single event to show them within the gameplay, I'm kind of limiting myself how I can tell those events. A lot of historical events are very hard to translate into the gameplay directly, because for the shooter, it has to have a speed, you have to follow from one objective to another and stuff like this. And if you start digging into events, what exactly happened is like a lot of time spent into ditches, waiting for the right moment. It doesn't work if you try to be too close to actual events. You have to allow yourself for some interpretation of those events, sometimes more, sometimes less, but you have to like bend them to actually make a gameplay around. This is something I take away from my working on the games like this.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. I definitely, I mean, video games are at the end an artistic expression. So it has to do with your own perception. Also, like, it's a means to something, to transmit something. So if you have to somehow manipulate or change the dynamics or like the flow of those events according to your artistic necessities, in my opinion, is justified. So I agree with you in this aspect. I want to point out one moment of the game that really shocked me, not in a good way, in a good way, I have to say, is when the little guy, the little boy, is climbing this massive amount of suitcase that are just put together. I don't know, I mean, it's like half to the end, I think, yeah, of the game. Yeah. So when you are climbing that mountain, you took a very interesting decision, which is like you can actually look inside those suitcases in some of them, and you can get like some personal objects of them. So it really, in my opinion, it humanized the story, right? It makes like, or the crimes, it makes like behind each suitcase there was a family, or there was a little girl, or there was a little boy who has lost everything because of this. So is, in your opinion, history a sum of individual own histories, like that they conform some sort of like a mosaic, and or is a different thing? What do you think in this aspect?
For me personally, it's definitely the sum of history of all the people who took part into those events and had the chance to tell their stories. They all offer a different perspective, a different experience of what happened, a different background that have an impact of how they see certain events, certain things that happened. So yeah, I mean, when I'm from my personal interest, even if I'm reading stuff about history, for a time I had a lot of interest in World War II history on many different aspects. I personally prefer the approach from historians that actually took an effort to go and collect those histories and just merge them into this one whole thing that will help us understand it better. Like, for example, Stephen Ambrose, I personally like him very much. His books about the Normandy, the invasion in Normandy, and all the things around this, like one of my favorite history books, because they are built exactly around this. They put an effort to go find the veterans, talk with them, get their stories, and put them into this one book to tell this story from a very different point of view, because we have sources that we can check how many people took part, how many vessels, and the strategy and stuff like this. But this is kind of special because there were the soldiers running through this beach and taking part in this operation, and their point of view is like something that is most important for me personally.
I see. I think it's very interesting what you were saying, and I take good note of the historian you mentioned, because I'm going to look for some of his books right now, because I think it's very, very interesting what you were saying. I have 3 more questions. So one has to do with visual metaphors that you have used in the game. So I mean, like when I was playing my Memory of Us, like the influence are kind of tangible, right? Is very easy to identify. For instance, Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List with the red color of the girl. That was a very direct one. But me as a movie lover, I also found some sort of like resemblance or similarities with I don't know, like René Clément's Forbidden Games, where the main characters in these World War II movies are a couple of 2 kids and their naive vision or view of what's going on during the World War II, right? So maybe that's like a classic. So it is actually like a cliche right now in movies. So maybe if you haven't watched that movie, it's understandable that the game kind of like drinks from that influence, right? So you have used several metaphors. Like the first one is, of course, like the robotic display of the invaders, let's say. Do you think that history, because I found it very, very interesting, this aspect, do you think like history, not in terms of academic history, but history, as you have said, like the sum of these individual stories could be taught through visual digital metaphors, as you did in the game, or transmitting?
Not only through this. This is a very helpful tool, but the facts, the numbers, everything like this is also important. So we can use those metaphors. We can use them to help convey, to start the discussion, to start the learning process, to get people interested into this. But you cannot teach only through this. This is example of, I think, like, and it's kind of rare, but when the teacher, sometimes we can see them, those type of teachers in the movies, when they actually starting from the emotionals, from something that connects those kids he's teaching, looking for the connection between their experience with something that's from the past, that this element that connects it, that allows to start the discussion, start the learning process. So those metaphors that help connect those elements, like find the similar emotions. Again, the same as in this example, when, like I said, kids who played this in America started to see it through the as some sort of African American discrimination and all the history around slavery and stuff like this, because this was something closer to them. And then, because they have this experience, this those feelings around this, and they are kind of similar with what people experienced during World War II, we have the connection that opens the discussion, opens a chance to, okay, so I can explain you more details what happened here, because you already have some interest, because you found this connection, and this is the first step. It could be a first step of learning, but not only for this. This is a metaphor. This is not a fact. And to fully understand what happened, you need facts as well, because the metaphor is not enough.
That was a brilliant answer. I think it could have not been explained better. So thank you so much for that answer. It's actually like very, very useful. I mean, yeah, really, like it was like, I mean, of course, like, I mean, I could have not explained it better. So so thank you for that. So, okay, so we are very close to finish. I have just one last question. And this has to do more in general terms, okay? It's not just about Memory of Us, but you, I mean, as a game developer, I assume that you are also like a video game player, right? Or a video game, right? Okay, so in your opinion, and this is just your opinion, I want to stress that. So of course, like there are no right or wrong answers. So in your opinion, what role can video games play in boosting society's collective memory on these historical events? Not only on World War II, but it could be also like on 2015 refugee crisis. It could be on Vietnam War, for instance, or in imperialism. So yeah, what role can video games play in boosting society's collective memory?
We have a lot of forms of art that we are kind of allowing to take a part in the discussion in keeping those memories alive. We have movies, we have books, we have theater, all the stuff. And for now, at least, the games are kind of outside. When there is a game that touches those subjects, there is always like, should they? Is it a good idea? And stuff like this. It's still at this moment of like a development of game industry. But what was always kind of behind the idea of this game and the company itself, it's like our thinking is the people, the clients, the people who buy games, who play them, they are actually, the games are actually grown up enough that they can start talking about those stuff. And what they can put new, the new element they can put on the table that books or movies cannot give us right now is the games are interactive. You are actually doing stuff, you are making decisions, you are in a way more inside the events we are showing in the game because of the interactive element, something that other forms of art don't have. So they have like additional set of tools that can help preserve the memory of any historical events, if done right, of course. But the interactive element as an addition to entire like set of tools we can use is very important, and this is something that games are adding to the options we have to preserve memories about historical events.
Thank you so much, Lukasz. Have a great day, and thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Thank you very much.